Hey guys, welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and today in the shop we've got this 2008 Scion XB. And this thing shows up with a really low idle. And when you pull up to a stop sign or a stoplight, it shakes real bad, like thut, 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 thut. Almost feels like a miss, but it's not missing. And so we're gonna go through this thing and we're gonna find out what's going on with it, why it's got such a low idle, and then we're gonna fix it. So come along and let's get into it together. So the thing shows up and it's got a really low idle. It's idling at around 400 RPM, 400 to 500 RPM. And what that does is it causes the car to shake, whump, 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 almost like a dead misfire. But you run the codes on the thing and there are absolutely no error codes at all. And there just doesn't appear to be anything obviously going on. So what we need to do is think about what can cause a car to idle low. So let's talk about that. What can cause a car to idle really low? Well, idling basically is just running at a very low RPM. Now, normally a car is set to idle at around 600 to 700 RPM, as this one should be. This car has the little, what is this, 2.4 liter inline 4-cylinder engine. It's a 2008. And the way that a car breathes is obviously through the air cleaner, which lives inside this box, and goes past a mass air meter, down a air tube through to the throttle body, which is back, let me see if I can get you back there, back under here. Okay, so this is a electronically controlled throttle body car. Now, on these newer cars with the electronic throttle body, they don't have an idle control circuit anymore. On the older cars that had the drive-by-wire, you know, you push a pedal and it's got a cable connected to the throttle. Well, in order for it to idle, that throttle blade would close up, and it needed to be able to breathe a little bit around that closed throttle plate. And so it had a little idle circuit. And there was a little motor with a little plunger. You guys remember having to take this thing out and clean it all the time, right? Yeah, those got carboned up, right? And as they got carboned up, they would stick or whatever, and it would idle funny. Now, on these modern ones with a throttle plate alone, there's no little idle circuit other than to just crack that throttle plate open just a little bit more. So the computer handles everything now, and it's all the throttle plate angle that's controlling how a car idles. So when a car's not idling right, if it's idling too high, then that throttle plate is open a little too much. If it's idling too low, that throttle plate is closed a little too much. So this car is idling too low. So that means that the throttle plate is either closed a little too much, or it thinks that it's choked back a little bit too much. And so it's having a hard time stay running at the 600 to 700 RPM that the computer wants it to run at. So what can cause a car to not be able to get enough air to breathe at the 600 or 700 RPM that it needs to? So let's look and see at our system here what we've got to work with. So in order to get air into our motor, it has to go past our air filter, has to be metered correctly by the mass air meter, and then it has to go through this air pipe down to our throttle body, which is back there, and then into the engine. So there's not a lot of components that we need to check here, but we need to look at all of those things and see if there's any kind of restrictions in them. Now, this car has 176,000 miles on it. It's had good maintenance for the most part, so I don't suspect that we're going to see that the air filter here is completely clogged or anything like that. The other thing that I need to tell you is that besides at idle, the thing runs fine. So you give it a little gas and man, it revs up just fine and goes down the road just fine. It's just when it goes to idle, it idles really low. So why why could it only be affected at idle? If there was a restriction in the air pathway here, the restriction for it breathing, either in or out, either intake or exhaust, then it would run poorly at all RPMs, not just the low RPMs. So I don't suspect that we've got a clog in our intake. I don't suspect that we've got a clog in our catalytic converters or our exhaust. We're going to have to look and see what specifically at idle do we need to look at in order to determine how a car runs. So let's get into that. Let me bring you down in here. You can see, here's our intake pipe, comes down through there and goes to our throttle body in the back. Now we just want to make sure that there's nothing goofy going on here with any of this. As I showed, the air cleaner was clean and the mass air meter looks good. We'll go ahead and clean that anyway, but then it's got this filter in here. But you can see through that filter and blow through that filter very easily. So none of this stuff is restrictions, and there's nothing down inside of our intake pipe here. So I don't suspect that there's anything nefarious going on up here. What I do suspect we're going to find is that, as I mentioned, this car has 176,000 miles. A lot of times when a car gets a lot of miles on it, especially, see this PCV? It's ingesting all that atomized oil from that head and taking it right into that throttle body. So a lot of times those throttle bodies, they'll get all clogged up and dirty and carboned up. And when that butterfly valve and that throttle body gets carboned and dirty and closed off with deposits, what happens is that throttle plate, it thinks that it only needs to be open this much, but if there's carbon blocking the pass of air around that throttle plate, it really needs to open just a little bit more. And sometimes it takes the computer a little while to figure that out. And so we're going to go in there and we're going to see if carbon deposits is the reason for all of this. Okay, so let's get this air intake pipe out of the way. We can disconnect this PCV hose either here at the valve cover or down there. We'll go ahead and try and do it right here. It just seems to be easily accessible, right? See if that wants to come off of there nice and easy. Come on now. No, it doesn't. See if the other end comes off easier. Oh yeah, much easier on the other end. So we'll go ahead and put that hose clamp back there. All right, now got a few different things attached right here, but nothing that can't be moved by. And we've got a hose clamp down here to remove. One of those locking hose clamps, that's nice. Okay. There we go. We'll just move that out of the way. That throttle body and see if it's carboned up. So what we're looking for is any kind of blackness around that butterfly plate there, especially where that plate mates up with or meets the surface of that bore. Trying to get the camera and the light in here at the same time. It's a little fiddly, guys, sorry. You see all that blackness around the edge of that butterfly valve, all that dust. You can even see lines along the wall where the air is being drawn in. And and you see how it's streaky? That means that there are paths that are faster than others. So there's probably some restrictions due to that carbon there. And let me see if I can open this thing up with my finger a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit better. I know it's dark without the light, but the light and my finger want to be in the same place here. I'm try and get in there and get you guys a good view. There we go. Okay. Oh yeah, look at that. You see all that gunk and all that carbon down in there? Yeah, this thing is, see, especially along the edge of that plate right there. Yeah, this thing is carboned up. And so that's the reason why it's running so poorly. And so what we need to do is clean that up, and then this thing will run a whole lot better. Okay, so we figured out what's going on. Things carboned up, right? Dirty as all get out. We're gonna clean it up. Oh, by the way, speaking of cleaning up, I found these these cool fake tattoo sleeves. Put them on to keep my arms from getting all greasy. I've got the gloves for the hands, but a lot of times you'll get that grease right up here, just past the gloves. I found these sleeves keep me from getting too greasy. Plus, they make you look cool for a little while you're working on cars. But here's what we're going to use in order to clean up that throttle body. Get yourself some throttle body cleaner. Okay, you don't want to use like brake cleaner or anything like that. Sometimes those chemicals are just a little too harsh for the electronics in there. And you're not going to need a whole lot of this stuff. Get a rag of some kind, either a terry cloth, a red rag, whatever. I'm going to use these heavy duty paper towels. And you want to soak this towel down with some of the spray here, and then use your finger and that towel. Just wrap your finger around that towel, kind of like that. Get it nice and wet with the throttle body cleaner, and get down inside of that throttle body and clean out. And you want to clean the edges of those throttle plates as best you can as well. You can push this thing open with your finger. Just do it nice and careful. If it feels like there's a lot of resistance or anything like that, stop. Don't force it. But it's okay to push it open. Just make sure, you don't be an idiot. Don't have the car running. Don't have, anybody try to start the car while you're doing it. And don't just spray the throttle body cleaner in there while it's running. That's not going to do you any good. You're going to have to get something to wipe it down, okay? Okay, so let's get down in there and clean this thing out. So I've got my paper towel here. I'm gonna soak my finger down real good with this throttle body cleaner. And we're gonna go in here and just start wiping that carbon out of it as best we can. Get all the way around that bore. Look at all that stuff coming up out of there. Now be careful, because these paper towels, they're going to want to fall apart. You don't want a lot of that paper getting down inside of your engine. And remember, it's okay to push this thing open with your finger so that you can get access to different parts of it. And we want to clean that edge of that throttle plate really good, because that edge, it's between that edge and the bore of the throttle body that small little opening that it's breathing through during idle circuit. And so you want to make sure that that's as clean as possible, is the space between this throttle blade and where it closes against the bore of the throttle body. I've stepped up. I didn't like this paper the way it was coming apart and falling apart with that cleaner. So I've stepped up to one of my wife's old dish towels. Shh, don't tell her. But we'll soak that down with a little bit of the throttle body cleaner, and then get down inside of there and just clean away. Prop that little plate open a little bit. The other good thing about using a regular towel is it has just a slight bit of texture to it, and it helps to really get some of that junk off of there. Okay, so now we got this thing cleaned up. You can see here the place where that butterfly comes against the side of the throttle body is nice and clean there. Before, that was all carboned up, and you can see that gap there between the butterfly and the throttle body. That's the gap that it breathes through while you're idling. And so if that gap has been clogged up by carbon, then it can't breathe as much as it needs to, and it's going to run really low idle and really poorly. So let's see how this thing runs now and if it idles where it should be. So here's all the carbon that we cleaned out of this throttle body. I mean, it was very dirty, and we'll see here, did that fix this Scion? Okay, so we cleaned that throttle body out, and now what do we got? We're idling at 660 RPM. The engine's warmed up, and the mass air meter is reading at about the same as the displacement of this engine, 2.4 liter at 2.4 grams per second. So everything is working good. Let's put it in gear and see if the loaded. Give it a little gas here. So that's loaded. Everything's running well. Okay, kick down 600 RPM, the lowest that it's going now. That's good. Put it in park, and it's settling around 650, 60, somewhere in there, RPM. Feels good, drives good. I'm gonna call that a fix. So there we go, guys. That wasn't so bad now, was it? So as I walked you through, it's just sort of thinking through the process of how does an engine get its air and what could be causing it not to be able to breathe the way that it needs to. In this case, we found that it was idling really low because it had a really dirty throttle body. And just real simple cleaning with some throttle body cleaner, wiping that inside of that throttle body and that butterfly valve clean. And as you can see, she's running great now. So this has got 175,000 miles on it or so. These cars that breathe all of those oil vapors through the PCV system, they're going to get that carbon built up, especially back behind that butterfly valve over time. And so it's just a good thing to check and to do every, I don't know, 75,000 miles, 100,000 miles or something like that on an old used car like this. And you'll be amazed just how much pep this thing gets back. It'll feel like it's, 10 years younger, let's say. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. You learned something. I know I did. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Y'all have a wonderful day, and God bless.